Rabbi,
I heard that one too. Rabbi asked little Melvin, there's something that he needs to know. What's that, my child? Asked the rabbi. Well, according to the scriptures, the children of Israel crossed the Red Sea, right? Right. And the children of Israel beat up the Philistines, right? Right. And the children of Israel built the temple, right? Again, you are correct. And the children of Israel fought the Egyptians, and the children of Israel fought the Egyptians, and the children of Israel were always doing something important, right? All that is right too, agreed the rabbi.
so what's your question? What I need to know is this, demanded Melvin. What were all the grown-ups doing? Yeshua's followers had been witness to wonderful things throughout his time with them. They had seen him perform wonderful miracles. They had beheld him making the wisest of the wise look foolish. They had seen him glorified on the mount and seen him talk with Moshe and Elijah. They had witnessed and participated in the celebration as he rode down the mountain with the adulation of many and raised their expectations of the soon coming kingdom to a fever pitch. Little did they know what was to come. Yeshua knew he'd be leaving them shortly, not because he would be gone forever, but because he was leaving to be with his Father. They would be sorely tested with the upcoming events of his trial and death. He knew they would be empowered by his resurrection and victory over sin and death. However, he would no longer physically be with them, and they would be fighting even more fierce warfare than the Israelites faced at the time of entering the Promised Land. They would be struggling against the rulers, authorities, and cosmic powers governing the world, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm. He wanted them to know what they needed to face these terrible foes and how they could be enabled to triumph against those powers that would seem overwhelming. He was not only facing death, but also a horrifying prelude to it. Yet his concern was not for what faced him, but what his followers would face. He knew that just like the Israelites that followed Moshe, these men were a proud, contentious lot. Just a short while ago, they had been arguing among themselves who would be the greatest when his kingdom was established. Even as they were gathered around the final meal they would share with Yeshua, they were still arguing, albeit not as loudly. It was now time to show them the way to victory in the struggle that they would be facing. What a shock it must have been to them when the man they called Master got up and removed his outer garments and wrapped a towel around his waist. Then he poured some water into a basin and began to wash their feet. Imagine their shame. For here was the one they knew was the Messiah, humbling himself before them. The meal itself was quite an event, as you well know, but I want to discuss in detail what followed the meal. For those who want to look through the biblical references, please consult John 13:33 to 16:33. There's a lot in these passages, so I probably won't be able to speak on everything that I'd like to, but we'll cover what we can. After the meal, Yeshua began to provide them with his final words. Words he knew they would need to hear. Yeshua began his talk by saying, "Little children." How interesting that was. Even though they'd been with him for 3 years, hearing his words, seeing his wondrous works, watching him make mincemeat out of the arguments of the spiritual leaders who opposed him, they were still little children who needed to be watched over and nourished, who still had a long way to go to mature, to be the leaders who would convey his message to the nation of Israel and then to the whole world. They definitely needed to hear what he was to tell them. He first told them he would be leaving them, and they would be unable to come where he was going. How puzzling that must have been to them. They had followed him wherever he went, and they were sure they would be able to follow him now. How could it be when they were willing to follow him to death, as Peter had just recently said? But Yeshua knew better. He began to tell them what was required of them to grow up and become the mature people they needed to be. What was the first thing he told them to prepare to become this type of people? Was it a master plan on how to approach people? A seminar on how to win friends and influence people? An insistence on being doctrinally pure? No, his words were, I'm giving you a new command, that you keep loving each other. In the same way that I have loved you, you are to keep on loving each other. On its own, this is a very powerful statement. We, as inheritors of the promise of Abraham, know the commandments of the Torah and believe we should obey them and let them guide our daily lives. And we should. But here's the one who gave us the Torah, summing it up in all its fullness. Love each other as he has loved us. What follows this is even more powerful. The next statement is truly a seminar on how to win friends and influence people. Everyone will know that you are my disciples by the fact that you have love for each other. How powerful that is. People won't know we are his followers because we have the truth, because we are doctrinally pure, because we keep the Torah, the tenets of the Torah to the nth degree, but because we love each other. This is a command from our Creator. And I have found here in Mishkahn a beautiful fulfillment of this command. I've never encountered a congregation so filled with love and compassion for one another and for those who are hurt and in need of his healing. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. However, having told them he couldn't go with them, he then softened the blow. He said, I'm going to prepare a place for you. Since I'm going and preparing a place for you, I will return to take you with me, so that where I am, there you may be also. What a promise that is. He was going away, and they couldn't come with him. He was going, but he would come again to take them there, after he prepared a place for them. And we, his modern-day disciples, also have that promise that no matter the struggles, no matter the problems we face, he is preparing a place for us that will come to take us back with him. But his followers were also puzzled. That Yeshua had told them that they knew where he was going, and they knew the way there. Thomas the doubter spoke up for the group. Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way? What did Yeshua say to them? I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And how do we come to the Father? Through him. Yeshua said, whoever has seen me has seen the Father. Yes, if we behold Yeshua and who he is and what he does, we will see the Father. Behold him healing the sick. Listen how he astounds the wise with his wisdom and insights. Watch this as he seeks out the lost among the people of Shamron and Zor. Rejoice as he raises the dead. This is the Father, the one who runs to embrace the prodigal, returning after wasting his life, who rejoices with the angels when the lost sheep is found. When he comes to Yeshua, we come to the Father. I want to now skip ahead to chapter 15 in John. And here we see the root of Yeshua going to the root of how his followers could be best prepared, how they could mature from becoming little children and to become the mature believers who would be fit to proclaim the truth of the Messiah to Israel and to the rest of the world. It also speaks to us today on how we can have a more abundant and a more fulfilling spiritual life. They had just left the room where they had partaken of the meal and began the walk that would ultimately lead to the final events of Yeshua's earthly life. Though the passage doesn't say so, I like to believe that Yeshua stopped them in a vineyard, and as he had done many times in the past, used the illustrations of nature and nurture to illustrate his point. Looking at the vines, Yeshua made a key statement. He said, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes it so that it may bear more fruit. He also says, I am the vine, and you are the branches. Let's look at this in a little more depth. Now, while what I'm saying now is actually, I'm saying it's mine, but it's actually the Lord's, I have to give credit for most of what I learned about the grapevine and its tending to a book called Secrets of the Vine by Bruce Wilkinson. And many of you, I don't know if any of you read it, but it's a beautiful, beautiful book. Yeshua said, I am the true vine. How many of you have ever seen a grapevine? Okay, so a lot of you have. Okay. I always pictured it as a tangle of thin, trailing limbs, like off of what I often found running around some of the bushes in my old property. However, I was surprised to find out the actual vine is the trunk of the plant that grows out of the ground. Those who tend the vine usually keep it trimmed at waist height, approximately 42 inches. The vine itself ends in a large gnarl from which the branches grow. When Yeshua said he is the vine, he was showing that he is the source of all nourishment for the branches, the one that makes the branches flourish. It is a vine that is anchored to the ground and draws its nourishment from the soil that sustains the branches. Without the vine, the branches wither and then die. My father is the gardener. While growing up, I would sometimes go exploring in the woods with my friends. Often we would come upon some wild grapevines. I would sample the fruit if it wasn't seasoned. Now, I didn't really pay attention to the trunk at that time, as I was more interested in fruit. But I remember that the grapes were rather small and didn't taste very sweet. Obviously, one of the main reasons was because they didn't have a gardener to tend them, to nurture them, to help them reach the peak of their flavor. In the case of a grapevine, the branches are the key as far as fruit is concerned, because from the branches the fruit comes. What is it the gardener does to nurture the branches? The first part of the verse 2 in John 15 is very telling. It says, every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. What does it mean to take away? A quick way to interpret this would be to say he cuts them off and throws them away. However, the words translated meant take away are often used to mean lift up or to take up, as when the disciples took up the 12 baskets of food after the 5,000 were fed, or when Shimon of Cyrene was forced to carry Yeshua's execution stake. If you ask someone who works in a vineyard, the branches that don't bear fruit are not just cut off and thrown away unless they're dead. In the book I just mentioned, the author talked about a conversation he had with the owner of a large vineyard in Northern California. According to the vineyard owner, new branches tend to trail down and grow along the ground, but they don't bear fruit there. The leaves get coated in dust, and it rains, they get muddy and mildewed. The branches become sickly and useless. So what does the gardener do? Does he just cut them off as useless? In the words of the vineyard owner, he says, oh no, the branch is much too valuable for that. We go through the vineyard with a bucket of water, looking for those branches. Then we wrap them around the trellis or tie them up. Pretty soon, they're thriving. Wonderful thought that is. The Father of all glory, the Creator, walking through the vineyard, looking for the fallen branches, lifting them up out of the muck and mire of sin, washing them with the living water of the Messiah, and tying them to his trellis of life so they can be tended by him to bear much fruit. How are the branches cleaned? We find a key in Deuteronomy 8:5. As Adonai was disciplining you, as a man disciplines his child. I believe when we become unfruitful, that is when God will discipline us. Do everything he can, short of forcing our free will to bring us back to bearing fruit for him. We see that throughout the history of Israel. How many times did Israel disappoint him, rebel against him, and reject his love? We've seen this in the golden calf incident, and we will see it again throughout the rest of the Torah as we go through it. However, throughout all the rebellion, did God cut off Israel completely from him? No. Will he cut us off? No. I believe it is only by our choice that we can be cut off from him. The Holy Spirit is constantly working us and wooing us to come back to him and to abide in him.